Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk to you about Sliders. So this will be the rundown review of the entire series. Sliders came out in 1995 and it lasted all the way to 2000, lasting for 5 seasons. Sliders is my all-time favorite show in the entire world when it comes to live action. Only Star Trek The Next Generation is like probably tied or coming second, but I love Sliders to death. It came out on the Fox network and it's funny because it has a very rocky history. There was so much behind the scenes drama that affected the show in major ways. It originally got canceled after the first season. The first season is probably, I think, only like 9 episodes or so, or maybe 6 or 9, something like that. And they showed a bunch of reruns. That was back in the day when television shows were actually on TV broadcast networks. And so after it got canceled, people actually didn't know it got canceled. But then the reruns and then people sending in letters and stuff like that helped it get it renewed for a second season. The second season is my all-time favorite season. I feel like that's when the show really started to identify itself on what it really wants to be. But then the network decided, we're gonna see, the show was created by Robert K. Wise and Tracy Tomei. No, his sister is not Hot Aunt May from the MCU, Marissa Tomei, but he does have a sister named Marissa Tomei. Very similar, very confusing, but the spelling is completely different in both the first and last name. Now, Tracy Tomei, he is best known for writing episodes in Star Trek The Next Generation. He was like a prodigy or like a pupil of Gene Roddenberry, the guy who created Star Trek. And so one day, either him or Robert was in like a waiting room one time and they saw like a magazine cover. And the magazine talked about like, what if George Washington like lived or something like that. No. What if George Washington got killed during like the battle and everything and never became president of the United States? And so that got him thinking parallel dimensions, or better yet um alternate histories and stuff, which got him to do the whole parallel dimensions thing. Now, Sliders is not the first series to delve into that of the multiverse. Brandon Braga from Star Trek says that his parallels episode was the first one to ever really show that on television, but Sliders is really truly the first television show to do it per episode. Every episode deals with the multiverse. The reason why I love this show so much, because it deals with the possibility of what if. What if America was this way? What if the world was that way? And it's very fascinating. And this show sometimes almost predicts the future in very scary ways. And so by the third season, they decided to get rid of the creators and change the format of Sliders. And that's when the show started to go downhill. They fired, like I said, both the creators, and they brought in a new showrunner. Now, I can't pronounce his name, David Peckinpah or something like that. They wanted him to change the show in the third season and make it more sexy and everything, more action packed. And so with that season, you started seeing more mini skirts, more short shorts, more guys with like huge muscles and tank tops. You started seeing a whole lot more action-packed episodes, and he started incorporating horror movie themes. It was very strange. It was a very bizarre season because it's like all of a sudden there you see these huge bodybuilding dudes and everything as like security guards. You'll see like a doctor wearing like the tightest mini skirt and everything, or like some really tight pants to show off her butt. And it was just kind of like unusual and bizarre. But the most unusual, bizarre thing ever was nearly every episode dealt with a big Hollywood movie. Twister, Nightmare on Elm Street. What is it like? Anaconda. What was I think it's called Anaconda. I think some other stuff I can't really think of right now. Like vampires started showing up in the show, zombies started showing up in the show. There was a giant mutant like slug type thing. There was like magical episodes. It was very strange and very bizarre to say the least. However, if you are dealing with parallel dimensions, then yeah, that could be a possibility in the fun aspect of it, but it was still strange to see because the show never really dealt with nothing like that before. See, the show's premise back in the day, the first two seasons, they dealt slightly changing historical events, slightly to the point where it's our same reality, but just things have shifted, like probably like a split hair or so. So you'll have like a world that like the Cold War did happen to a real war, and then America lost to Russia, and Russia owns the United States. There's a world where we lost to England, and now England owns the United States. There's a world where women are, well, what is it, the 90s? I remember that. It was were like the dominant species on Earth, and men came second fiddle to them, where the men stayed in the kitchen and the women went to work, and the women were very perverted and very dominant and stuff. There's a world that dealt with like a super virus that like took out the entire population of Earth. Only a few people, or a few like 100,000 people are left. And there was a world where there was like a virus, a man-made virus that during the war between Australia and America that only targeted the male gene. And as a result of that, there's only probably like a dozen men left in the world, and it's nothing but female. There was a world where like the mob like runs a lot of stuff. There's a world where teenagers rule the world instead of like adults. There's a world where they dealt with Darwin's like theory of evolution, and they dealt with Earth population to the point where basically they there were so many people on the earth but very few resources. So as a result, they would have this thing like a lottery, and with this lottery they would like you get to live like a really good like life for like a whole week. You get all this money, you get everything for free. But then at the end of the week, you have to kill yourself and everything, commit suicide. And it's because they had so many people, but so little resources. And so they voluntarily like killed themselves and stuff. It's a weird concept to think about, but as a result, there aren't like all that crime, all that disease. There are more resources for people. It's a weird way to look at things, but this show made you think, and that's the important thing. It really made you think. There was one world in the third season where like young people were forced to be like donors. So like if a rich older person needed like a new kidney, a young person who was like 18 to 20 something was forced to give it to him. And it was a really rough way of living, but the rich just wanted to live, and the older people and stuff. There was a world where they clone people, and whenever you need like a new limb, a new eye, or this and that, they would take it from the clone, and the clones really didn't have no personality, but some of them, actually a lot of them, had their own like consciousness and could think and act and everything, and they wanted their own rights. There was a world where it was pretty segregated in California to where only white people wanted to rule, and this one governor dude or senator dude wanted to keep it that way. So what he would do is that they would take every person of color, put them in like internment camps, and then they would separate certain people. And like they would kill some, they would have some working in like, the detention camps, and then they would make the other ones like they would kind of like brainwash them and turn them into this weird looking synthetic type of thing. And so like people assumed that, oh, these are just robots, but they weren't robots. They were modified humans and stuff. It was a really disgusted way to look at, like, racism, but it was very potent and stuff that made you really think. Now, by the fourth season, so they got canceled after the third season because it was just so weird and wacky with all the horror movie stuff. And so they went over to sci-fi for their last two seasons. Now, the fourth season is actually pretty good. It dealt with more technological type stuff, but kind of went back to that of season one and season two. And then by season five, well, the lead actor decided to leave, and the show just went stupid after that. And then it got canceled for good. There's been talks of revivals, like, the actors are trying to get it back, but no prevail. They don't really know who has the rights to it. The original creator, he keeps trying to bring it back, but once again, to no prevail. They tried to make like movie, but to no prevail. I think it's pretty dead in the water, which is quite a shame because, we are now dealing in Hollywood where all they want to do is talk about the multiverse. This would be the perfect time to bring this show back. Now, like I said before, this show dealt with a lot of drama. A lot of its main stars were fired from the show or they quit. Originally, it was reported that one dude quit, but really he said he was fired. And then this one actress, she decided to quit because she couldn't get along with the new actress they brought in the third season. And so then the main star of the show, who character created the sliding technology, he decided to quit to be a movie star. That's Jerry O'Connell. And Jerry O'Connell was Ralphie from A Christmas Story in one of the 90s movies. I never knew that. And so when he quit, they decided to fire his brother. And so basically I got tired of their revolving door of new castmates, because in season 5 I particularly didn't like who they brought in, because they brought in a new actor to play the dimensional duplicate of Quinn Mallory, the dude who created sliding, played by Jerry O'Connell. And it was just weird seeing the same character but with a different face and then from a different world and stuff. Then they brought in this new doctor lady, where it's I don't know, it just didn't feel the same no more with all the new cast members and other people leaving. But the first season, every season is almost different from another. The first season was more comedic. Tracy Torme wanted the show to be a drama comedy, so it was mostly just a drama with comedy, ha ha ha's thrown in here and there. The main person for comedic relief was Rembrandt Brown. But the first season is solid. I like the first season. The levity of humor is really interesting, because you got to think about it. You think about this in a realistic type way. There are going to people who are going to make jokes and act a little sillier and stuff like that. And so basically the first season deals with Quinn Mallory. He's a boy genius, and he creates a sliding device. He was trying to make an anti-gravitational unit, but instead he created sliding. And so he decided to test it out on himself. And then when he did, he went to a parallel dimension where everything is kind of turned around. Elvis was still alive. Red means go on the traffic light. And his mom was pregnant. And so when he came back to his world, he was so excited, and he perfected the technology into a device called a timer. A timer is very crucial for this series. It's a little remote control cell phone type device. Well, its first was designed after a Motorola, I think, cell phone. Losing my voice. It's a little chilly. And so basically, when you slide, you have to be on Earth or that parallel Earth for a certain amount of time. Sometimes it's a couple of minutes, sometimes it's a couple of hours, sometimes it's days, it's weeks. And when your timer counts down to 0, you have to slide no matter what. If you don't slide, then you're stuck on that world for 23 years or something like that. And so, like, if you slide early, like before it counts down to zero, then you corrupt the device, and then your home coordinates get erased, and then you're just surfing the multiverse until you can find your way back home. And so, when he went to the other world, another version of Quinn was on his world, sliding, doing this, causing mayhem and mischief and stuff like that. And it helped him crack the code to sliding because he needed just one piece left. And so his professor, Professor Arturo, and his best friend Wade, who he works with, they wanted to see if he was okay because he was acting a little weird. He kissed Wade, he insulted his boss, and he insulted the professor. So when they go to his basement to see what's going on, they see that he created, like, sliding technology. The professor was wild and amazed that he was able to do that. Wade was just like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because Wade's not really all that like smart. She's good with computers, but she's not like a scientist. And so, like, she wanted to go on a trip around the multiverse. Quinn was totally down for it. Professor was weary. He was like, no, we need to test this out more and stuff like that. But he decided he'll do it for scientific curiosity. So Quinn did the dumb mistake of increasing the power on the timer, and it made the vortex go really, really big. The vortex is like this swirly type thing, like a portal, and then you go down like a tunnel. And so when he increased it, it made it go so big, it went outside the house and into the street. This is where Rembrandt Brown, the black actor, comes in. And so he's driving around and boom, gets sucked in. And so because of that, they're on an icy type world where it's like an atomic, like, winter. Things go so crazy on that world to where they can't survive on it and they have to activate the timer early. When they do, like I said before, it erased their home coordinates and corrupted the system, and now they're surfing the multiverse. They end up on a world ruled by Russia, and they have to join a resistance fighting force. They assume they get home at the end of the episode, but they are not, because Quinn sees his father. What's so significant about that is that Quinn's father is dead on his world. And so because of that, every episode they just go from like, one world to another, and it's very interesting, very intriguing. There's a world where an asteroid is about to hit the planet and they can't slide because like it isn't time. So they have to find a way to get rid of the asteroid, meteorite, right type thing. So they create the atom bomb because see, one of the dudes on that world had the atom bomb, because on that world Einstein sabotaged the atom bomb because he couldn't deal with the consequences of nuclear fallout and stuff. So they still had the outside casing of it and some of the stuff inside it, and the professor, being as smart as he is, he had to, like, put the rest of the components in there, and then they sent off into space, and then they nuked that asteroid and everything. There's one world where, like, Rembrandt, because Rembrandt is a singer from like the 70s and 80s in his world, and he was with the group, but then he went solo, and then his solo career did not happen the way he wanted it to. And on this other world, he was basically like the biggest rock star of them all time. And so, like, then there's a world where they get separated, and it's kind of like a hippie world back in like that of the 60s and 70s of the year of love. And so, like, and the first season made for a lot of hilarious stuff. Rembrandt was like one of the coolest black characters I've ever seen on a television show. He had the coolest dialogue. He was comedic. He could do serious type stuff. I love that character to death. And so, like, then there was another world. I'm trying to think where they went. It was it's where like the mob was like rigging stuff in like sports, and on a world where actually intelligent people are revered. They are like the rock stars of the world, and like athletes and singers come second fiddle to them. So it's very interesting premise how things will shift and change on like these worlds and stuff. By like the second season, everything started to get more serious. The humor was starting to drop and everything. And it became more of a drama series. And I liked that a whole lot better. They really found their, like, their place in the series. And they went to a lot of interesting worlds. They went to a world where, like, men were gone, and because like that virus took all men out and there was only a couple of them, so men that were left were put in like these breeder camps. And on that world it was very segregated. Like they only wanted the best women to like make babies, so you had to be of a certain age, a certain like health and stuff like that. And older women, or women who weren't considered pretty enough, well, like weren't allowed to make babies. And so then they was on a world where dinosaurs were never extinct. That made to be a very fascinating episode. There is another episode. I'm trying to think right now. I've always talked about this, but like I can't really think of nothing right now. My mind is kind of drawing a blank. There's one world they went with more like the old Wild West. Lawyers and stuff. They dealt their situations out by having like a shootout. And so you had to do the whole like count to 10, turn around and shoot your opponent. It was a very interesting way of doing the law. There was another world that was really interesting where they turned all of California into a penal colony, very similar how the English did Australia. They sent all their criminals over there. They're insane criminals. And that world dealt with a lot of earthquakes. So those people were just there basically just to die and everything. And some people do wonder, would that make civilization a whole lot better if you put all your criminals on one area? Well, it didn't turn out so well for Australia, but then Australia seems to be a pretty chill place from what I heard. You don't really hear much from them. And so, like, you don't never hear them trying to like cause war with anybody, or like trying to like, do anything bad to other countries and stuff like that. So who knows, what I'm saying? And then there was a world where they thought they got home. It was nearly identical to theirs, except for a few little things. And because of that, that dealt with the whole professor. Which one is it? Because the professor was acting weird on that world the entire time. Turns out the good one was kidnapped by like the evil one. And he wanted to make sliding all about him and get rich off it and stuff. And so when they slid the end of the episode, nobody knew which one slid. And so for many years, nobody knew, but the creator finally told everybody. And plus, I already knew who kind of slid because it was pretty self-evident by the way his expression was and stuff. The bad one slid and the good one stayed on that earth. But it was never brought up after that. So it could have made for some good drama, but the network didn't really want to do that. The network always interfered in this show when it came to the second season, because in the first season, when they slid the end of the episode, you'll see what that episode is like. And then like, um, they would expand more in the next episode. And so they didn't want to do that to network. So they were like, nobody's going to care and blah, 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 blah. And so just go to like random worlds and stuff. And, I liked the format better back in the day because they would explain how they got money to eat, how they got a hotel to live in, because, they don't have places to live. They are basically nomads and stuff with no money. They have to like assume sometimes the role of their like duplicate and like, take on their life, and sometimes just get like a random job and, and stuff like that. But then by later seasons, when the network's like, we don't care, then all of a sudden you start seeing them with money all the time. You start seeing them in nice hotels, and it was just kind of nice new clothes in new episodes because they used to always wear the same thing back in the day. And so like, like I said before, you get into the third season, a lot of crazy stuff was happening. Both the creators left. They fired John Rhys-Davies. If that's his name, hold on. I keep getting his name messed up. Yeah, John Rhys-Davies. And so like, then at the very end of the last episode, the actress Sabrina Lloyd, she left because she couldn't get along with Kari Roar. And so like, they brought in Kari as Maggie Beckett, and Maggie, because after the professor died, she was more like a hard-nosed military person who didn't really get along with the other characters, and she didn't get along with that one actress in real life. And the dynamic of the show and the tone of the show really changed and shift. All of a sudden, you had all these like movies, big Hollywood movies, themes in like every episode. It was really weird. There was like a snake episode. There was like an atomic twister type episode. There was a vampire, that one slug thing, an Egyptian episode with a giant like beetle bug. There was always some type of giant monster looking thing. There was one where people had magical powers. There was one where people were placed on a reality show and they literally had to like fight to the death, like a survival group. And it was just a weird way of looking at the show, but once again, parallel dimensions, different like strokes and different blokes. You know what I'm saying? But then, I can see that being part of the multiverse, but just not the way they did it. And in every episode, there's one where when people are stressed out, they put them in this theme park and then they brainwash them to think that they're actual characters and like a Sherlock Holmes type thing. It was just a weird way looking at this show. And so the professor was killed off because the actor kept fighting with the new showrunner and stuff and the network. Basically, he said the show could have been so much better, but y'all keep mucking it up, and they did. And it's just that third season was so strange. There's one where like there's this magical water. There's some where if you go into like the woods, there's like this fog that like messes with your mind and everything. And it was just so bizarre and chaotic. Now, it was just so strange. And then they had a primary villain throughout the show called Rickman, because the show never really had a villain. And so they wanted to have a villain. And so basically he killed the professor, he killed Maggie's husband, and this is what caused them to chase after him during the multiverse. And the thing is, when they capture him, what are they going to do with him? Are they going to just take him with them? Are they going to send him off to jail? Are they going to kill him? Like, what exactly are they going to do? And the thing about Rickman is that he had this fungal infection thing from like the jungle, and he has to take I can't talk, brain fluid from like people and inject it in the back of his head. And when he does that, his face would like shapeshift into like the person like DNA he took. And that was just always so weird. Like I always looked at that, just like, what the world are y'all doing in this show? Needless to say, it got canceled after the third season, and Fox didn't want it no more after messing it up. So Sci-Fi took it on. And because Sabrina Lloyd had left, they had to write out her absence. Basically, these new villains took over because Rickman later died. And they brought in these villains named the Cro-Mags that look kind of like these ape-looking people, but they're really humans on another world. But of course, they got magical powers. They're kind of like Vulcans. They can read your mind. They can make you see things. It was weird. It was just weird. And so Cro-Mags hate humans because of how they was mistreated on their world. So they go to every other world trying to kill humans and stuff. And so then it turned out that Quinn is in fact not from the Earth that we saw in the first season. He's from Cro-Mag Earth. And his parents did the whole Superman thing and sent him to like another world. And he had a brother all of a sudden. His real life brother played his fictional brother. And so with that, their whole goal is to find Quinn's Earth so they can find some type of like weapon that can destroy the Cro-Mags and stuff, because the Cro-Mags are now taking over so many different worlds, and they have taken over the original Earth from season 1 where Rembrandt and the rest of the Sliders were originally from. And so this was actually a pretty good season. It kind of went back to season 1 and 2, but with a more sci-fi kind of feel, and it was more drama packed. It had a lot of weird, like sci-fi-ish type technology they used, which I was okay with because different worlds and stuff like that. And so here they dealt in a world where like the rich live in these huge penthouse apartments and they're always on the internet. and they live their lives on the internet. Sound familiar? 'Cause, I mean, that's what we do now. And the poor people are living in the slumps and they're not allowed to be on the internet. And so a lot of people down below try to sneak into these penthouse places and take over the internet. And a guy and a girl from both sides of the world fall in love with each other. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet. There is another world where, like, I'm trying to think. I'm so brain dead right now. Like I knew all this stuff before, but I just I haven't even watched Sliders in like a long time since I started like this channel and started streaming and stuff like that. And ah, there's one world where a lot of companies like to do mergers. So what they do the whole king and queen thing, where they make their young people have to marry each other. So say Fox and Disney wanted to merge. Well, the person who owns the company, their kids will have to be forced into marriage, and that's how they do like the merger. It's a really unique way of doing that, especially with the whole ancient king and queen thing of like making your kids marry and taking over the country and watching them consummate their love and the merger type thing. It was very fascinating. And in that world, people love to just watch TV. That's all they ever did. And then there was another world where the Chromads like took people from other Earths and then they started hunting them down one by one as like a training type thing. There was another world where like they had to like fight the Cro-Mags and destroy like this powerful weapon that can destroy an entire planet. And one of the Cro-Mag dudes, he was contemplating his place in like the army. He was kind of like disgraced, and so Maggie had to like talk to him and try to like convince him that humans aren't as bad as he thinks. And then he turns against his own people. Man, I can't really think of no episodes right now. My mind is just drawing a blank for some bizarre reason, which is very bizarre. Like I talked about this show in depth before many years ago on my other channel, but here I'm just drawing like a huge blank. Oh, there's a really good religious episode where it's like this world is like very fascinating, where like religious type people, and they trick people into thinking you're going to transverse into the next world. And so the sliders think, oh, they're using sliding technology because it looks like theirs, but it's actually an incinerator. They lie to these people, killing them and stuff. And so, because like, these people, before they go, they hand over all their possessions, their money, their houses, and this and that. And they write it to that of the church, to this guy named like the Oracle and stuff. And so, like, after doing all that, they kill these people. And a lot of the people on the earth don't know this is happening, but some do. And so one of the guys who works for the church, he just can't take it no more. He wanted to expose them. And when he saw the sliders coming in, he realized that he can do it with them and stuff. It's a very fascinating episode on religion. Because a lot of people are, some people are for religion, some people are not. Some people are like, oh, they're just here to take your money and stuff like that. And it was a really fascinating take on it and stuff. And it's weird because the fourth season was still created by the dude who brought in the movie monsters and stuff. But because Fox was no longer running it, they didn't have to do all that. So he could, in fact, make a good show. He just didn't do it in the third season. And so, like, in this season we get to see Quinn's like other parents from like his world and stuff like that, but different versions of them. He never actually made it to Chromag Prime. And so by the fifth season, so when the show started to suck again, Quinn left, they got rid of Colin, and they brought in two new people. They brought in Quinn's dimensional duplicate that looked nothing like him, and they put Quinn's consciousness inside the duplicate. And so they're still looking for that weapon to like fight the Chromax, but every episode was just badly written. Every world they went into was just very stupid. They changed the rules of sliding to where time travel started to be affected by, which is not supposed to happen. It was just a very lackluster season, and I hate it to death, and I never like talking about it. So that's it. But like, show is very fascinating. Quinn, played by Jerry O'Connell, he is the one who created sliding on season one. And, like he's this egghead of like a person. He's a little goofy in season one. And, he just wants to explore the multiverse, but then he has all this grief because, he ruined the lives of his friends. They can't get back home. And so they're just going from world to world. And of course, they blame him for it. By season two, he's a bit more serious and stuff. And, he's still just going through the motions of like sliding to different worlds and trying to help people out. By the third season, he decides he wants to play hero. He thinks sliding is now giving him the opportunity to live out his fantasies of helping people. He starts more fights with people. Oh, Negan from The Walking Dead is in season two, in that world where they put everybody in California in a penal colony. Anyway, he starts fighting people a whole lot more. He tries to do the whole damn from the stress by helping women and stuff. He is a very different person by season three. And then like he starts to have like fall in love with a married woman who is Maggie. When her husband dies, she slides with him and he still wants to start a relationship, but not really. He used to like Wade back in season one and two. But then he finally stopped because she realizes he's not going to take that seriously and stuff. And so like in season three, he starts to get a little bit more arrogant and stuff like that until the professor dies. And then it's like, he's dealing with that loss because he loved the professor to death, like a father figure. And he blames himself because if he never created sliding, none of this would never happen. Then by the fourth season, Wade gets taken by the Cro-Mags into a breeder camp. And so now she's forced to have all these Cro-Mag babies. And he hates that, because he ruined that woman's life. And then next thing you know, he turns out he's not even from Earth Prime. He's from Cro-Mag Prime. And he's never met his real biological parents and stuff. Just their dimensional duplicates. Then it turns out he has a brother. And, by this time he starts to get more serious and stuff. We get to see more of his brain power come out, and with him learning all this different technology and stuff like that. But then of course by the fifth season he ends up leaving and gets trapped inside his dimensional duplicate. They try to get him out and then they say, oh no, he's gone, now he's dead. Professor Arturo, he was the man. Like, he was always saving the day in season one and season two. Even though Quinn is smart, he is smarter. He is the one who stopped a plague. There was a world where they created a virus and they infected the entire world. And he is the one who came up with the antidote. He came up with penicillin because they didn't have penicillin on their world because they thought molds were like disgusting and like give you diseases. And then next thing you know, like he created like penicillin from scratch. He created a nuclear bomb that stopped the asteroid. He is very stern, very loud, very proud, and always calling people a blistering idiot. He holds science at the highest level of anything, and he thinks he's better than like other people because of how smart he is. He's a little bit old-fashioned in like the sense that like because he is a grown man and he's like really smart, then people should treat him better with more respect than this and that, especially when they get to the world where women rule the world and he decides he's gonna like campaign against the mayor and everything, even though he doesn't know the first thing about being a mayor. And so in the second season, like I said before, he switches with his duplicate and he's still the same person. Like he's still saving the day. He's very stern. He's giving advice here and there. He's always telling the sliders, stop interfering with these people's lives and let's just live a quiet, peaceful life until it's time to slide. Let's just stay out their lives, because every time we interfere in their lives, one, it leads to trouble, and two, we have no business interfering in their status quo. Like, yes, their worlds are terrible and they oppress people, but it is their world and not ours, and we can't oppose our views on them. But they never listen to him, and so much bad stuff always happens when they interfere. And so then by the third season, they decided, all right, let's just kill this character off. So first he was sick and dying of a disease, then they cured him of that. Then he started going blind, they cured him of that. And then all of a sudden they finally decided, hey, let's just kill him as soon as we're about to get to the real world and everything. Because at that time, the actor reached his boiling point with like the creators, and they decided, let's just get rid of this dude. Rembrandt is a very interesting character. In the first season, like I said before, he was just a singer, and then he was trying to make a comeback, but it was never working out. And so he's very goofy in the first season. When the Sliders are off doing their thing, trying to save the world, he is off having a good time. He's partying, he's drinking, he's hooking up with women. He's hooking up with women that he used to date on his world that look similar on this world, and he makes for a lot of good comedic relief. However, he's written to be a very selfish person because he's off having fun while they're off being chased by like bad guys and this and that, or trying to save the world. And so but he is our point of view into the show. He's kind of like the audience. By the second season, he's a lot more serious. He's taking sliding a lot more serious. He's staying with the group. He's no longer partying and acting crazy and stuff like that. He's really like pulling his own weight. By the third season, he starts to have romantic relations with like that of Wade. He's in love with her, which is kind of weird. He's so much older than her, and they just needed his character and her character to actually do something. It was that weird season, but like him and Quinn constantly kept getting in it because even in the first season, he kept blaming Quinn for the whole sliding thing. He never asked for none of this. He is a victim in all of that. And so by the fourth season, when at the end of the third, he went back to his world, but he got separated from Quinn and Maggie, and him and Wade were like on their earth, but taken over by Cro-Mags. They tortured him to crap. They implanted like hypnotic suggestions in his head to kill like Quinn and all that. So in the fourth season, he's really going through the motions. He hates Cro-Mags to death, and he just wants to kill them, all while trying to find that weapon to help save his world. But then his views on Cro-Mags start to change when they're on a different Cro-Mag Earth, and the Cro-Mags are treated so badly by that of the humans. And it makes for a lot of great emotional drama and stuff. By the fifth season, I don't really even remember what the world he did. But in the last episode, he makes it back to Earth with a cure to kill the Cro-Mags, but we don't know what happens because it ends on a cliffhanger. Wade is like the girl next door. She was just best friends with Quinn and had a crush on him, and then they went sliding. She is the more sensible one. She is the one that always cares about other worlds and wants to help people out, which always get them in some type of trouble. They wrote her to be like a damsel in distress a lot. She's always getting kidnapped and everything. She's really good with computers, but you don't find that out until the third season. And so basically she was just the character who was there just to be the nice female type character, and a lot of people love her to death. And so when she was written off the show, people really felt bad because we loved that character so much. But by the third season, she was really starting to go through it as well. She could not get over the professor's death, and she had hated Maggie to death. She also didn't like seeing Quinn always giving Maggie the Google eyes because she used to really have a huge crush on Quinn. And so, but Quinn will sometimes he'll be into her, but then he'll act like he wouldn't. There's an episode where there's this psychic guy, and he's supposed to be the prime oracle, and he reads her minds and gives her everything she wants, and she's starting to fall in love with him until she finds out that he just pretty much just wants to keep her there for him and him only, and invading her thoughts, and he's like a stalker obsession type dude. By season 4, she's written out and she's made to make a bunch of Cro-Mag babies. By the 5th season, she came back for one episode, but the actress did not return, just her voice. They had another one playing her in silhouette. Basically, the actress didn't want to come back because they was not going to pay her the same amount as they was paying the guys. Hollywood, man, I swear they never want to pay the female actresses. And so she used her newfound powers they gave her that helped the Sliders out, and then supposedly she is now dead. Maggie came in the third season, and she was there to be kind of like the brute of like the group, the one who was supposed to fill out the third season's quota of being like action packed and sex appeal. And they will always put her in some of like the most revealing tank tops at times. And so basically, she had a husband. Her husband created sliding. She had an affair on her husband with Rickman, because she's in the military and Rickman's in the military. And then when Quinn and his group came in, she almost had an affair with Quinn. Rickman ends up killing her husband when he sees him doing something bad, and so now she has a vendetta against Rickman. They slide to like worlds with like that of the Sliders, and she constantly hunting him down. She's very selfish, she's very angry, and she's always deserting the group to go look for Rickman and stuff. She could have been a very cool character in the third season, but she was written to be like the ultimate B and everything. And her character always wanted to fight with Wade. Turns out in real life, both actresses were fighting in real life. And so like, but something strange happened. By the fourth season, she turned around because Wade was no longer there. She became the new Wade of the series. She still had a little attitude to her, but she was mostly more a better rounded out character. She was more fleshed out. She was more sensible. She cared about people. They made her character so much better from the fourth and that of the fifth season. Colin was like the brother of Quinn, and he got separated from Quinn all his life. He lived on a world where it was pretty much like, the Pilgrim type era, but he was like very advanced at science and stuff, which people thought he was a witch doctor. When him and Quinn found each other, he slid the multiverse with Quinn, trying to adapt to all the different worlds, but it became a bit too overwhelming for him at times. He's a really nice guy. He's really goofy, but he's very naive. He doesn't understand the fundamentals of like society, because on his world it was very much like the Pilgrim days and stuff, So he has a hard time trying to adjust. But then we see him in some episodes where he adjusts very well and quickly and learning how to drive really fast and by himself. And it's just kind of like how? And he's from a world that doesn't have technology like that. But he is extremely smart, just not as smart as like Quinn. So then we get Mallory, who is the dimensional duplicate of Quinn Mallory. He is unable to walk, is in a wheelchair until this professor type dude fuses our Quinn with this Quinn. And so then he starts sliding the multiverse with the Sliders, trying to help them find like, that thing that's supposed to get rid of the Chromax and stuff. He has all of Quinn Mallory's, which is very weird because Quinn during the fourth season had feelings for Maggie, and so I don't really remember nothing about him other than he messes up a lot in the fifth season, and he's the new primary hero. I just wish that character was never created. Along with Dr. Diane Davis, she's in the fifth season. She's the doctor who knows a lot about sliding. She helped the dude who trapped Quinn in the other Quinn's body, but she didn't know he was doing that. So now she feels like she owes it to the Sliders to help them out. And she's very smart and everything, but she makes a lot of mistakes. I don't really remember much about the fifth season, so I'm not even gonna get into her character. I just don't even remember. I just remember she changed the outcome of one of her duplicates by somehow time traveling and altering that life of that woman. And as a result, the lady no longer has a kid. Which is weird because sliding goes from world to world, not like different time. But, whatever. That's when the show started to suck. The fifth season was so bad that like even sci-fi wasn't even paying attention to what the world they was writing. And so like because the executive at like sci-fi wasn't paying attention, they couldn't oversee nothing. This show crumbled and just got the axe by the end of the fifth season. It's quite a shame. Like this was a really good, interesting show that dealt with the possibility of what if. And there are so many possibilities of what if. Because you stop and you think, what if you would have done something a little bit differently? How would that change your future outcome? And that's what was so great about this show. It dealt with that. There was a world where Hillary Clinton was like the president. There was a world where like, it was illegal to have coffee and everything. And as a result, this fungal type infection type thing, bacterial type infection created like zombies or whatever. As I said, this show gets weird sometimes. There is a world where like I can't think of nothing. There was a really interesting world where it's like the people of this one world ran out of resources. So they created sliding and they started stealing from other worlds. They would have brownouts where they would have to turn off all the power for certain hours and time of the day just so they can conserve energy. And this is where we met our very first female Quinn from another world. She was very evil. She just wanted to like rob every world of their resources and give it to her own. And it's really interesting, especially that whole world where they like, will kill each other on purpose, because it's like you have so many people on a world and you don't have that many resources. Like, what will you do? And people won't stop making babies and stuff like that. And this is a show that really made you think about stuff like that and why people grow old and die and stuff like that. And so this show was very fascinating. It was ahead of its time. It should have lasted a whole lot longer than what it did. But, because of the politics of the networks, this show just imploded on itself. And it's quite a shame. Alrighty. Well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.